Right now, I mean, right this very second, your phone's camera isn't just capturing light. It's actively hallucinating.
Yeah, that is such a wild way to think about it.
Right. Because the millisecond you press the shutter, this completely invisible algorithm decides how blue the sky should be or, how smooth your skin should look.
Exactly. It's erasing shadows
Yeah,
entirely.
and you think you're just taking a photograph, but you're actually co-creating an image with a piece of software. And the software is guessing what reality should look like based on like millions of other photos.
It really is. It doesn't ask for your permission. It just quietly alters
Yeah.
reality to make it more pleasing to the eye.
It's crazy. Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a massive stack of research, primarily anchored by this fascinating document titled How AI is Changing Everyday Life.
And it is a fascinating read.
It really is. And our mission for you, the listener, is pretty straightforward today. We want to be your shortcut to being genuinely, practically well informed on a topic that feels, simultaneously thrilling and deeply unsettling.
Unsettling is definitely the word for it.
For sure. And to do that, we are aggressively tossing out the extreme narratives.
Yeah.
So forget the utopian magical thinking that AI will just flawlessly solve all of human suffering.
Right. And equally, forget the sci-fi panic that an evil supercomputer is coming to destroy the world.
Exactly, because neither of those extremes offers any practical utility for your life tomorrow morning.
No, they don't. Our goal today is to dissect not merely what this technology is doing in the background, but the actual underlying mechanics of how it functions.
Yeah,
And, why your daily choices regarding it matter so profoundly.
yeah.
We're exploring AI as a powerful, everyday utility. We really want to strip away the jargon to discover how you can harness it practically, without just being paralyzed by the sheer flood of information out there.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can talk about how to use AI to draft an email or brainstorm a project, we have to establish a baseline reality that this source material just hammers home.
And that reality is that you are already using it.
Constantly. I mean, we have to drag this concept of artificial intelligence down from some abstract glowing cloud server and locate it right in the mundane reality of the device sitting in your pocket.
Which requires a really serious reset of our cultural expectations. I mean, when people hear artificial intelligence, decades of movies and television just immediately conjure up a walking, talking robot.
Right, like with a metallic voice.
Exactly, a discrete physical entity you can point at. But our source material demystifies this definition right away. AI, in its current everyday form, is just software.
Just code.
Yeah. Specifically, it's a complex web of statistical models. They're designed to ingest massive amounts of data, recognize patterns within that data, and then make probabilistic predictions about what comes next. It's there to assist in decision-making.
So it's not a robot physically bringing you breakfast in bed. Sadly, no.
It's the predictive text, finishing your sentence. Or, it's the instant translation app turning a Japanese menu into English right before your eyes.
Exactly that. And because it doesn't have glowing red eyes, and because it operates behind completely familiar digital interfaces, we drastically underestimate its presence.
We really do.
The text introduces a critical concept here, which is the invisibility of technology. When a revolutionary tool works well and integrates seamlessly into our routine, it just vanishes from our conscious awareness.
I look at it like electricity.
That's a great comparison.
Right, because when you walk into a dark room and flick a switch, you don't stand there contemplating the local power plant or the complex grid of high-voltage wires.
You're not thinking about alternating current mechanisms.
No, you just expect the light to turn on. The electricity is completely invisible to you until the power grid fails. And that is the perfect mechanism to understand our current relationship with AI. We don't pause to consider the massive neural networks engaging when our email provider automatically detects a sophisticated phishing scam.
Yeah, it just goes to the spam folder.
Right. And we don't marvel at the facial recognition algorithms measuring the depth and geometry of our faces in real time just to unlock our phones. We just expect the phone to open. We expect the inbox to be clean.
Which brings us right back to that camera hallucination I mentioned at the start. Because the smartphone is really ground zero for this invisible magic. People assume they are engaging in traditional photography. But the source breaks down the computational mechanism happening the literal moment you press the button.
It's wild. Traditional cameras just let light hit a sensor and that was that.
Exactly.
Now, the smartphone camera takes multiple exposures in a fraction of a second. The AI analyzes all that pixel data, It recognizes the contrast patterns that make up a human face, and it mathematically brightens those specific pixels.
While, like, softening the contrast to blur your pores.
Yes. It recognizes the geometric shape of a person and artificially blurs the background pixels to simulate a professional lens. It measures the color temperature and literally recalculates the sky to be a richer blue than it actually is.
So the software isn't capturing the objective world at all.
Not at all. It is analyzing raw data and predicting what a quote-unquote good photo looks like based on its training data. And that data consists of millions of highly edited professional photographs.
So it kind of forces your reality to conform to a statistical average of beauty.
Exactly. And that predictive mechanism applies everywhere. When you type on your keyboard, the AI isn't just suggesting words. It's running a complex probabilistic model based on your historical typing habits to guess the most likely next word.
Which is why it starts to sound so much like you.
Right. And voice assistants aren't just recording audio. They're parsing the messy acoustic waveforms of your speech, translating that into text, guessing the intent behind the text, and then executing a command.
But according to the research we have, the most significant and perhaps most insidious invisible presence is the recommendation algorithm running social media platforms.
Oh, absolutely.
We are talking about TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. The text lays out how these platforms use highly sophisticated machine learning models to study your behavior.
Yeah.
And they aren't just looking at what you like or comment on.
No, it's way deeper than that.
They're measuring the micro hesitations, like how many milliseconds did you let a video play before swiping? Did you rewatch the first 3 seconds? Did you slow down your scroll as an image passed by?
It's tracking everything.
The algorithm maps every tiny behavioral vector to predict exactly what piece of content will keep your eyes on the screen for another 10 seconds.
And the psychological vulnerability that this invisibility creates is just massive.
Yeah.
Because when you don't realize an algorithm is actively curating and manipulating your feed based on these micro behaviors, you fall into what the text calls a narrow bubble.
A narrow bubble.
Yeah. The algorithm identifies a pattern. Say you linger on 2 videos about a controversial political topic. The AI doesn't know if you agree with the videos or if you are just hate watching them.
Right. It doesn't understand context.
Exactly. It only knows that the topic triggered an engagement metric. So it immediately begins flooding your feed with more extreme, hyper-targeted variations of that same content to maximize your time on the app.
But let me push back on that for a second. If social media AI is essentially just a hyper-efficient matching engine, getting really good at giving us exactly what we want to see, why is that inherently dangerous? I mean, if I start engaging with baking videos and it transforms my feed into an endless stream of master bakers making sourdough, isn't that just a brilliant product? Isn't it just giving you exactly what you want?
I mean, that's how it looks on the surface, but let's look at the underlying mechanism of that recommendation. The trap of the algorithmic bubble is that serving people only what they want, or more accurately, what has triggered a dopamine response in their brain, systematically eliminates friction and diverse perspectives.
Okay, I see.
If it's sourdough baking, the stakes are low. But if it's social commentary, global news, health advice, or lifestyle standards, the AI begins to architect your worldview by exclusion.
Wow.
It isn't just responding to human desire anymore, it is actively shaping and reinforcing it. It narrows your reality without your explicit consent. You think you are making a conscious, free choice to consume certain media, but the menu you are choosing from has been entirely pre-selected by a machine designed purely to maximize advertising revenue.
Wow. So it isn't a mirror reflecting our interests back at us. It's like a funhouse mirror.
That's a great way to put it.
It takes one small aspect of our curiosity, magnifies it to bizarre proportions, and warps the rest of the world out of view. And because the algorithm is invisible, you assume everyone else's mirror looks exactly like yours. You assume the whole world is obsessed with what you were obsessed with.
Precisely. And this leads to a highly fragmented societal reality, where 2 people living in the exact same house can have completely different, algorithmically generated understandings of what is happening in the world.
That is staggering. And if this invisible technology is already quietly hijacking our personal habits, our attention spans, and our worldview right on our phones, it begs the question, what happens when it clocks in with us at the office?
That's the next big frontier.
We are moving from passive consumption on the couch to active production at the desk. The source material spends a lot of time analyzing this transition, specifically how AI is disrupting the modern workplace.
And job disruption is universally the point where anxiety spikes, which is completely understandable. Our source document addresses the panic head-on, and it clarifies a critical reality. AI is not going to wake up tomorrow and universally replace every human worker in a sudden, dramatic sweep.
Right, that is the sci-fi narrative again.
Exactly. What it will do is fundamentally change the mechanics of many, many jobs.
And the text is very clinical about identifying which tasks are in the crosshairs. It points directly at work that is repetitive, predictable, and heavily text-based. So if your day consists of reading long email threads and summarizing them, or pulling data from one spreadsheet to format it into another, or drafting routine weekly reports, that work is highly vulnerable.
Fairly vulnerable.
But the text doesn't just stop at the stereotypical cubicle job. It lists affected fields that require deep, specialized knowledge. We're talking graphic design, video editing, computer programming, logistics, financial analysis, education, and even healthcare.
The reason the reach is so broad across such disparate industries goes back to the core definition of the technology. AI is a pattern recognition and generation engine. Whether it's looking at a pattern of code, a pattern of legal text, a pattern of financial transactions, or a pattern of pixels in a graphic design, the underlying mechanism is the exact same.
It's all just patterns.
Exactly. The machine can ingest the pattern and generate predictable outputs infinitely faster than a human. But the crucial distinction the text makes is not about human obsolescence. It's about the integration of a new tool. For the adaptive worker, AI is becoming an incredibly powerful assistant, a coworker that never sleeps and excels at clearing the clutter.
The document refers to it as conquering the boring tasks, and that really resonated with me. I mean, imagine an AI tool summarizing a chaotic 50-message email chain so you only have to read 3 bullet points.
It's a lifesaver.
It is. Or imagine taking your messy, half-coherent meeting notes, dumping them into an interface, and instantly receiving a clean, formatted list of action items assigned to specific people. The text highlights a compounding mathematical reality here. If an AI assistant saves you just 30 minutes a day on administrative friction, that compounds into 10 hours saved every single month.
Which is huge.
That is more than a full working day given back to you to do actual deep strategic human work.
Which leads to the real paradigm shift identified in the source material. The future of the labor market is not going to be AI versus humans. It is going to be humans who use AI versus humans who don't.
The new divide.
Yes, the new divide.
If you are refusing to use the tool out of stubbornness or fear, you are essentially choosing to dig a ditch with a spoon while the person next to you is using an excavator.
Exactly. And to ensure you end up in the driver's seat of the excavator, the text outlines 3 distinct, non-negotiable skills every worker must develop immediately.
Okay, let's hear them.
Number 1 is the ability to ask better questions, widely known as prompting. Number 2 is the rigorous, disciplined habit of checking the AI's answers. And number 3 is the skill of combining the raw AI output with your own human domain expertise.
Let's really drill down into that first one, the art of the prompt. Because I guarantee you a huge percentage of people try a tool like ChatGPT once. They type in something incredibly vague, they get a bland robotic response, and they conclude, well, this technology is useless.
Right, it's a super common experience.
The document provides a great illustrative contrast to explain this mechanism. Imagine you need to generate content for a fitness brand. A weak prompt is simply commanding the machine write something about fitness.
Right, and if you give a probabilistic model a completely unconstrained command like that, it is going to pull from the absolute broadest, most generic center of its training data. It will spit out an encyclopedia-style definition of exercise that provides 0 value to anyone. You haven't given the engine any parameters to navigate the data.
But then the text outlines what a strong prompt actually looks like. Instead of write something about fitness, you write, act as an expert physical therapist. Write a 5-minute YouTube script for beginners about building a daily walking habit. Use a friendly, encouraging tone, avoid medical jargon, and include a simple real-life example of a busy parent fitting a 10-minute walk into their schedule.
Notice the mechanics of what you just did there. You didn't just ask a question. You engineered a highly specific context window. You assigned the AI a persona, an expert physical therapist. You define the format and length, a 5-minute YouTube script. You specify the target audience, beginners. You dictated the style, friendly and jargon-free. And you demanded specific structural elements, a real-life example of a busy parent.
It's so much more detailed.
Large language models thrive on constraints. The more narrowly you define the parameters of the probabilistic space, the more refined, specific, and useful the generated text will be. Prompting isn't just typing. It's programming with natural language.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. And honestly, this is the fear that keeps a lot of creative professionals up at night. If we become master prompters and the AI does all the heavy lifting of organizing the data, drafting the structure, and writing the actual paragraphs, I mean, aren't we risking a massive loss of our own intellectual edge?
It's a big concern.
If I rely on an AI to draft every single professional email and client proposal, am I eventually going to lose the neurological ability to sit down at a blank page and write a coherent, persuasive argument myself? Does the convenience lead to mental atrophy?
It's a deeply valid fear, and it's precisely why the source text places such heavy emphasis on those second and third skills, independent verification and the application of human judgment. Let's reframe the relationship. Think of a large language model, not as a genius intern, but as an incredibly fast culinary student who has perfectly memorized every recipe book ever written in human history.
Okay, I like this.
This student knows that, statistically speaking, garlic goes with onions and tomatoes go with basil. But the student has absolutely no sense of taste. They cannot taste the soup. If you, the head chef, don't know what the soup should taste like, you are going to serve a terrible meal.
Oh, wow. That is a brilliant way to look at it. The AI has the vocabulary, it has the statistical syntax, but it completely lacks the lived context.
Precisely. The AI can draft a flawlessly grammatical email to your client, but the AI doesn't understand office politics. It doesn't know that the specific client you are emailing had a terrible experience with a similar project 3 years ago and is highly sensitive to the word restructuring.
It has no idea about the human element.
Exactly. And the text explicitly warns that AI models can hallucinate. They can invent facts, cite fake studies, and sound incredibly confidently wrong. The human's job shifts from the manual labor of generating the raw text to being the expert editor. The value you bring is your domain expertise, your ability to taste the soup, realize it needs more salt, and adjust it before it goes out the door.
So you are outsourcing your thinking, you are outsourcing the typing. You still have to do the intellectual labor of reviewing, verifying, and contextualizing the output.
If you want to survive the transition, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this shift from being the manual creator of raw material to being the high-level director of outputs serves as the perfect bridge into the next massive area of our deep dive. Because if AI is automating our emails and spreadsheets, what happens when we point that same automation at something deeply personal, like art, storytelling, and business branding?
We enter the realm of the automation of thought versus true creativity. The source text spends significant time dissecting what it calls the solo creator boom. The barrier to entry for high-level multimedia production has effectively dropped to zero.
Completely zero.
Historically, if you wanted to produce a professional marketing video or a documentary, you needed a copywriter, a voice actor, a studio, an illustrator, an animator, and a video editor.
Which is a massive logistical hurdle. I mean, the cost alone.
It was huge.
Mm.
But the text maps out how a single person sitting in their bedroom with a laptop can now string together a chain of AI APIs. They can use a language model to write the script. They can feed that script into a voice cloning algorithm that generates a highly realistic, emotionally inflected voiceover.
It's what?
They can use image generators to create stunning visual assets, feed those into an animation AI to give them motion, and use another tool to automatically sync dynamic subtitles. What used to take a team of 6 people a month can be done by one person before lunch.
The democratization of these tools is staggering, especially for small businesses. Like a local independent bakery or hardware store can use these systems to generate polished product descriptions, sophisticated advertising copy, and daily social media campaigns that look and sound identical to a massive, well-funded corporation.
And the global reach mechanism is even more profound.
Oh, the dubbing.
Yes. The document highlights AI dubbing technology. It isn't just translating text. The software maps the acoustic vectors of a speaker's voice, translates the language, and then resynthesizes the audio so that a video originally recorded in Vietnamese is seamlessly dubbed into English, Spanish, or Japanese. And it uses the original creator's exact vocal tone and emotional cadence. The geographic and linguistic moats that used to protect local markets are completely evaporating.
It sounds incredibly empowering. I mean, it sounds like a creative utopia where anyone with an idea can execute it instantly. But the text drops a massive, unavoidable warning label right in the middle of this utopia, which is the empty content problem.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because the barrier to entry has vanished, everyone on the planet now has access to the exact same suite of AI tools. And what is the immediate result? We are drowning in a sea of sameness. You open social media and start seeing hundreds of videos that all share the same slightly robotic AI voice, the same predictable pacing, the same weirdly flawless plastic-looking stock footage, and the same overly dramatic, royalty-free background music.
This is where we have to establish a rigorous boundary between two concepts
Yeah.
that the source material separates very deliberately. Content and value. They're not the same thing.
Right.
AI can produce content effortlessly. It can churn out 5,000 words on any topic or render 10 hours of video in a matter of seconds. Content is just digital filler taking up space on a screen.
But AI does not and cannot automatically produce value.
Because value requires a reason to care. Exactly. The text argues that to create actual value, something that human being will stop scrolling to engage with, there must be an anchor of human authenticity. A unique philosophical angle, a specific messy life experience, a highly personalized sense of humor, or a distinct aesthetic taste.
Something real.
For businesses, the document warns that leaning too heavily on automated generation without human personalization results in bland, generic corporate speak that actively repels customers. The human ear is remarkably adept at detecting the absence of a human soul in a piece of writing. If a business uses AI to erase its unique voice rather than amplify it, it destroys its own brand.
So it all comes down to the human driving the machine. But I have to throw out the philosophical question that is ripping the creative world apart right now. Let's look at image generation. If a user boots up an AI tool, types a forward prompt like a futuristic cyberpunk city, hits enter, and accepts the very first image the machine spits out, is that user a creator? Is that art? Or is it just glorified Google searching? Where's the line between a genuine artist and someone just pulling a slot machine lever?
What's fascinating here is how the source text contextualizes this debate, not by looking forward, but by looking backward at the history of technology. It scales the definition of creativity based on the degree of human friction and iteration.
Oh, well,
When the camera was first invented, traditional portrait painters were furious. They argued that simply aiming a wooden box and pressing a mechanical button required no skill and therefore wasn't real art. It was just an automated capture of reality.
that's so true.
A century later, when the electronic synthesizer was introduced, classical musicians argued that pressing a plastic key to trigger a pre-programmed sound wave wasn't real music.
But history proved both of those arguments completely wrong. We eventually recognized that photography and electronic music are profoundly deep art forms. The art wasn't in the mechanical button of the camera. The art was in the eye of the photographer, the lighting, the framing, the timing, the conceptual vision.
Precisely. And the document applies that exact framework to AI. AI is becoming just another tool in the creative stack. If you simply type a basic prompt and accept the first output without any further thought, your human contribution is negligible. You are just a tourist taking a snapshot.
Right.
But if you have a complex, pre-existing vision, if you spend hours iterating on the prompt, generating dozens of variations, heavily editing the output, combining it with your own hand-drawn elements, and using the AI strictly as a brush to execute a specific human idea, then the tool is being wielded creatively.
That makes total sense.
However, the text doesn't let the AI industry off the hook here. It highlights the massive, unresolved ethical crisis regarding how these models were built. These generators are trained on the copyrighted works of millions of human artists without their consent or compensation. The unauthorized imitation of an artist's unique, recognizable style is a severe threat to their livelihood. The text reminds us that originality isn't just a legal debate, it is the fundamental currency of art.
That distinction between empty content and human value is critical, and it requires the human mind to stay sharp, active, and engaged, which perfectly transitions us to Section 4 of our deep dive, The Mind's Crutch.
This is a heavy section.
It is, because if AI is changing how we create things for the outside world, we have to look at how it is impacting our internal world. How is this invisible magic altering education, the way we learn language, and even the way we experience human connection?
We are moving now from the production of external content to the internal development of the human intellect. And this is arguably the most delicate area we will cover. The source text begins by exploring the profound capabilities of AI in education, specifically its role as a hyper-personalized tutor.
The mechanism here is incredible.
It really is. Imagine a large language model instructed to act as an English language tutor. A student can converse with it via voice. The AI can instantly analyze their grammar, simulate a high-pressure IELTS speaking exam, adapt the vocabulary complexity to exactly match the student's current proficiency level, and patiently explain mistakes without ever getting frustrated or tired.
And it is completely flipping the dynamic for educators, too. The text details how overwhelmed teachers are using these tools to conquer their administrative mountains. They are feeding curriculum standards into the AI to instantly generate week-long lesson plans, design complex grading rubrics, and create diverse multiple-choice quizzes. It saves them hours of grinding paperwork so they can theoretically spend more time looking their students in the eye.
The potential to democratize elite-level tutoring is massive. However, introducing a machine that can flawlessly execute intellectual labor immediately triggers what the text calls the cheating dilemma.
Right, because if the AI is smart enough to act as the perfect patient tutor explaining a history concept, it is also smart enough to just write the 5-page history essay for you while you play video games.
Exactly.
The document cuts right to the core of this risk, which is outsourcing the struggle. Using AI to do the work creates an immediate, highly rewarding short-term benefit. You get the essay done in 10 seconds, and you get the A grade. But it inflicts a devastating long-term weakness.
Because the mechanism of learning requires cognitive friction. If you never struggle to synthesize disorganized research into a coherent argument, you never build the neural pathways required for critical thinking.
You just skip the learning part entirely.
Yes, and this risk extends far beyond the classroom into how we navigate global communication. The text highlights how AI translation tools are dismantling massive language barriers in real time. A business owner can draft an email in their native language, and the AI translates it into perfectly nuanced, culturally appropriate English, opening up global trade.
But again, the psychological risk of relying on that crutch is severe. The source uses 2 brilliant analogies that I want to explore because they completely changed how I view this. First, the calculator analogy.
That's a good one.
Right. A calculator is a phenomenal tool if you already understand the foundational mechanics of arithmetic. It speeds up your workflow. But a calculator is actively harmful to a child who uses it to avoid ever learning how numbers relate to each other in the first place. If you don't know the math, you won't even realize when you've typed a number in wrong and the calculator gives you a nonsensical answer.
Exactly, you have no baseline.
And second, the GPS analogy. If you rely on the GPS on your phone for every single turn of every single drive, you literally lose your internal sense of direction. The spatial mapping part of your brain atrophies.
Those analogies perfectly isolate the mechanism of dependence. We are outsourcing our cognitive maps to a machine. And the source document takes this concept into an area that is, frankly, deeply sobering. It explores the rise of emotional dependence on AI.
Yeah, this part was wild.
People are increasingly turning to highly customized AI chatbots for companionship, to organize their anxious thoughts, or to seek emotional support and validation.
And this is where I struggle the most, because let's look at the reality that there is an epidemic of loneliness. Traditional mental health care is expensive and hard to access. On the surface, if someone is isolated and needs to vent at 2:00 a.m., an AI chatbot is always there. It has infinite patience. It never judges you.
It's a very compelling band-aid.
But if people are turning to AI for emotional support, precisely because the machine is programmed to always say the right thing, to always be endlessly supportive, and to never have its own needs or bad days, I mean, aren't we setting ourselves up for disaster? Are we training ourselves to be completely disappointed by real, messy, unpredictable human beings who occasionally argue back?
This raises an important question about the fundamental nature of connection. The document addresses this directly, acknowledging the temporary comfort these tools can provide. But it insists we must understand the underlying mechanism of the machine. And AI does not understand emotions.
It doesn't feel anything.
Exactly. It does not feel empathy. It is not listening to you. It is simply analyzing the text you inputted, searching its massive database of human conversations, and predicting the sequence of text tokens that statistically represent an empathetic response. It is a mathematical simulation of caring.
It is the illusion of connection without the stakes of vulnerability.
Exactly. And the text warns that while that illusion might be comforting in a moment of distress, it must never serve as a replacement for real human friction or professional psychological help. Furthermore, the document highlights a specific, acute vulnerability regarding children. An adult might conceptually understand they're interacting with a statistical pattern-matching algorithm. A child does not.
Yes. The text is adamant about this. Children lack the foundational media literacy and psychological boundaries to protect themselves. They don't have the context to know when an AI is confidently presenting biased or historically inaccurate information as fact. They don't realize that the simulated friend agreeing with them might be encouraging unhealthy behavior. The burden of strict supervision is entirely on the parents.
Which brings a heavy sense of responsibility. And the emotional, intellectual, and psychological vulnerabilities we've just mapped out on an individual level scale up perfectly into the macro level themes of our next section. We have to zoom out. We've seen how AI affects the individual phone, the individual worker, and the individual mind. Now we look at the societal level in Section 5, the Big Five risks and the future landscape.
It's time to face the music, because this technology is moving faster than any regulatory body can keep up with. The source document categorizes the macro-level dangers into the Big Five risks, and understanding the mechanics of these risks isn't just for tech geeks, it is non-negotiable for anyone trying to navigate the modern world safely. Let's really dig into them. Risk number 1, misinformation.
The mechanism of misinformation has been fundamentally altered. Historically, creating a convincing fake video or audio recording required a massive budget and a team of Hollywood-level visual effects artists. The barrier was high. Today, through technologies like generative adversarial networks or GANs, the barrier is zero.
Wait, what are GANs exactly?
So a JAC basically pits two AI models against each other. One tries to create a fake image, and the other tries to detect if it's fake.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they battle back and forth millions of times until the generator can produce an image or clone a voice that is statistically indistinguishable from reality. This means we are facing an absolute tsunami of deepfakes and cheap fakes. Bad actors can generate realistic audio of a politician declaring war, or a CEO announcing bankruptcy, or even a fake voicemail of your own child asking for ransom money, all for a few cents.
That is terrifying. We are entering a reality where you literally cannot blindly trust your own eyes or ears anymore. And that flows right into risk number 2, privacy. The text makes a crucial point about the mechanics of how these models learn. These AI tools are insatiably data hungry. When you interact with a free AI chatbot, you aren't just using a tool, you are feeding the machine.
You're training it.
Exactly. If you upload a sensitive personal document, a confidential legal brief, or your company's proprietary source code into a public AI to have it summarized, you are essentially updating the training weights of that model. You have handed that data over to a tech company, and there is a non-zero chance the model could regurgitate fragments of your private data to another user in the future.
Risk number 3 is the macro scale of job disruption, which we touched on earlier. While AI won't cause immediate mass unemployment across the board, the text underscores the painful transition period for massive sectors of the economy relying on routine cognitive labor. The urgent societal need is reskilling workers to focus on strictly human domains, complex leadership, physical world problem solving, and empathetic client relations.
Right. And risk number 4 is the societal scale of dependence. If an entire generation outsources its critical thinking, its writing, and its daily logistical decision-making to centralized AI models, we face a fragile society that literally forgets how to function if the servers go down.
And risk number 5 is perhaps the most insidious because it is completely invisible: ethics and bias. The document explains a mechanical reality that a lot of people miss. AI is not inherently objective. An AI model is trained by scraping massive amounts of data from the internet. And what is the internet? It is a giant historical mirror of human society, complete with all of our historical prejudices, stereotypes, and biases.
It's all just human data.
Exactly. If the historical data shows that managers are predominantly male, the AI will statistically favor male resumes when instructed to sort job applicants. It isn't a malicious programmer writing racist code. It is the mathematical amplification of our own flawed history.
It's a huge problem.
Furthermore, the text points out the massive accountability gap. When a highly complex black box AI system makes a recommendation that wrongly denies someone a loan or misdiagnoses a patient, the transparency is zero. Who is legally responsible? The doctor who trusted the AI, the programmer who built it, the corporation that sold it.
It is a profound legal and ethical minefield. And yet, despite these 5 massive existential risks, the text projection for the next decade is not a slowdown, but a rapid, deep, and total integration. The future landscape described in the document is one where AI assistants evolve from isolated apps you have to consciously open into ambient, deeply integrated agents running across your entire digital life. They will have access to your calendar, your financial data, your health metrics, and your real-time location.
The source material envisions an ecosystem where the AI in your car communicates with the AI in your smart home to manage energy based on your exact arrival time. But the most significant high-stakes arena it highlights is healthcare.
Yeah, this was amazing to read.
We were talking about using AI for highly complex medical image analysis, detecting microscopic anomalies in an MRI that a human radiologist might miss through sheer fatigue.
And that healthcare example illustrates the core tension of the future landscape. As AI scales up from low-stakes tasks like writing an email into high-stakes areas where a hallucination doesn't mean a typo, but a misdiagnosis or a car crash, the entire conversation shifts. The text emphasizes that as capability increases exponentially, the ultimate bottleneck will be trust. Society won't just ask, can the AI perform this complex task? The primary question will be, do I trust this invisible, probabilistic model with my privacy, my physical safety, and my life?
Let me loop back to the privacy aspect for a second, because the text gives an incredibly clear, practical rule of thumb that every single listener needs to memorize right
Okay,
now.
yes, please share this.
It says, don't put information into an AI tool if you wouldn't be comfortable sending it to a third-party service.
It's such a brilliant, actionable boundary. If you wouldn't staple that document to a public bulletin board or hand it to a stranger on the street, do not paste it into a free chatbot prompt, period.
It is exactly the kind of blunt, practical boundary required to navigate the current environment.
But I want to push back aggressively on the first risk we discussed, misinformation and deepfakes. If the technology is evolving so rapidly that JANs can produce video and audio that completely fools forensic experts, isn't telling the average listener they just need to practice better media literacy a massive cop-out?
That's a very fair point.
Isn't the tech industry placing an incredibly unfair burden on the consumer? How is a busy parent juggling a job and kids supposed to keep up with military-grade psychological deception technologies scrolling past on their Facebook feed while they drink their morning coffee?
Your frustration is entirely justified, and it identifies a massive structural failure. The document acknowledges that society desperately needs sweeping, enforceable regulations, technological watermarks, and that tech platforms must take legal responsibility for the algorithmic distribution of synthetic media.
But we don't have that yet.
However, the pragmatic reality of the present moment, the actual world you and I are living in today, is that legislation moves at the speed of bureaucracy, and technology moves at the speed of light. Until those structural protections are built, individual user awareness is quite literally the only shield available to protect your own mind.
So what does that shield actually look like? What practical steps does the text offer for media literacy that go beyond just saying, be careful?
The source outlines a forensic checklist for evaluating digital content in the AI era. You can no longer trust your initial emotional reaction to a piece of media. You have to ask mechanical questions. Where did this originate? Is there a known, established, legally accountable journalistic source attached to it?
You have to double-check everything.
Yes. If you see an extraordinary, outrage-inducing video, can you find that same event reported in multiple, trusted, independent venues? You have to aggressively question the lighting, the audio sync, and the context of the artifact. Yes, it is an exhausting cognitive burden, but the text treats it not as an option, but as a mandatory survival skill for the modern information ecosystem.
We all have to become our own private investigators just to read the news. It's heavy. Which brings us to the final and arguably most crucial part of our discussion today, the action plan. We've journeyed through the invisible algorithms warping reality, the disruption of the global workforce, the philosophical crisis of art, the psychological crutches of emotional AI, and the massive societal risks. It is a staggering amount of information. So let's bring it right back down to the ground. What can you, the listener, actually do tomorrow morning to take control of this technology in your own specific life?
The source document provides a brilliantly grounded starting point, which is to start extremely small. The most common mistake people make is reading an article about AI, panicking, trying to automate their entire professional and personal life in one afternoon, getting overwhelmed by the friction, and quitting entirely.
That's so relatable.
The text suggests identifying just one annoying, repetitive daily task. Maybe it's planning your family's weekly dinner menu and grocery list. Maybe it's organizing your chaotic meeting notes. Maybe it's drafting the structure for a weekly update email you hate writing. Pick one low-stakes task and use an AI assistant to help with just that one thing, repeatedly, until you understand the mechanism and it becomes a seamless habit.
Don't try to change your whole life, just change one task. I love the pragmatism of that. And to guide the listener through that one task, the text provides what I consider the absolute crown jewel of the document, the four-question framework. You should run this mental checklist every single time you open an AI interface. Let's walk through it.
Let's do it.
Question 1. What specific task do I want help with? You have to define the parameters. Question 2. What information am I giving the AI to complete this task? That's where you apply the privacy rule. Question 3. How will I independently check the result it gives me? And question 4. How can I add my own human judgment, taste, or creativity to the final output?
That framework is pure gold because it forces deliberate intentionality. The most critical is question 3. If you cannot answer how you will independently verify the AI's output, you have no business using AI for that specific task yet. You lack the domain expertise to taste the soup.
Right.
Alongside the framework, the document provides 3 beginner tips to anchor your practice. First, treat AI outputs exclusively as rough drafts, never as the final answer. You remain the editor-in-chief of your life. Second, protect your privacy aggressively. And third, maintain psychological adaptability, because the interface you master today will likely be obsolete and replaced by something more powerful in 6 months.
And the key to making the AI actually useful rather than just a frustrating novelty is understanding the mechanism of communication. The text emphasizes that interacting with a large language model should be an iterative conversation, not a one-time command prompt. If it gives you a terrible robotic first draft of an email, you don't just throw your hands up and say, well, AI is garbage. You iterate. You type back, this sounds too corporate, rewrite it to sound more conversational. Or, it's too dramatic, dial the emotion back by 50% and add a real-life example about a shipping delay. You actively steer the probabilistic machine closer to your desired outcome.
That iterative steering is exactly where the real, practical value of the tool is unlocked. It is a collaborative refinement process.
So what does this all mean? If we synthesize all the warnings, all the mechanics, and all the frameworks in this document, the ultimate goal it advocates for is a posture of careful curiosity. But how do we actually walk that tightrope? How do we stay hyper-aware of the massive risks, the deepfakes, the privacy loss, the mental atrophy, without becoming paralyzed by the fear of doing it wrong or getting left behind?
The source text offers a beautiful synthesis to answer that exact tension. The underlying thesis of the entire document is that artificial intelligence is, fundamentally, a human issue, not just a technological one. Yes, the underlying math and software are incomprehensibly complex, but the real-world impact of that software is determined entirely by human choices and human constraints.
It's still up to us.
Exactly. By actively applying that 4-question framework, by relentlessly verifying the outputs with your own expertise, and by guarding your critical thinking skills, you are being firmly in the driver's seat. You are not being replaced by a machine, you are being augmented by a tool. Careful curiosity means you are brave enough to wade into the water and learn the mechanics of the tool, but you are grounded enough to never ever surrender your own human judgment to it.
What an incredible, expansive journey through this material. Let's do a quick recap of the terrain we've covered today. We started by ripping the invisible cloak off the algorithms, revealing how smartphone cameras and social media feeds actively alter our reality and curate our worldview through micro-behaviors. We moved into the workplace, discovering the mechanics of job disruption and how mastering prompt engineering and human domain expertise is the only way to survive the new divide.
We explored the complex nuances of the solo creator boom, drawing a hard line between generating empty digital content and crafting authentic human value, looking back at the history of cameras and synthesizers for context. We examined the severe psychological risks of leaning on AI as an intellectual and emotional crutch, warning against the atrophy of our minds and the illusion of simulated empathy.
We stared down the massive macro-level societal risks, the terrifying reality of deepfakes, the erosion of privacy, and the embedded bias in training data, and realized that rigorous individual media literacy is our primary defense in the short term. And finally, we landed on a highly practical, everyday framework for action, starting with one small task, relentlessly applying the 4 questions and treating AI as an iterative conversational draft engine. The homework for you, the listener, is incredibly simple. Find just one small, annoying task this week and test it out. Be carefully curious.
It is the only balanced, empowered approach to surviving and thriving in the midst of a profound technological revolution.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought that builds on the mechanics of everything we've read today. Something for you to mull over as you go about your week. We've spent this entire time talking about AI striving for statistical perfection, perfect computational photography, flawless grammatical writing, instant translation, and even perfectly supportive, never angry, simulated emotional responses. If AI eventually becomes capable of flawlessly executing all of these things at zero cost, will we eventually start to value human flaws, mistakes, and quirks as the ultimate premium mark of authenticity?
Oh, that's really interesting.
In a near future where perfect is cheap, instant, and mass-produced by a machine, maybe being humanly imperfect will become the most valuable, sought-after, and beautiful trait of all.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human history, that might just be our saving grace, a fascinating possibility to consider.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The future of AI isn't just about the underlying code, it's entirely about the choices you make with it today. We'll see you next time.